You know, when you think about the epic story of Dune, it's easy to think it all starts with Paul on Arrakis. But that's not the whole story. Not even close. The real beginning, the spark that lit the whole fire, happened way before that. It's all about the decay of an ancient empire. And today, we're going to dig right into Dune House Corrino to see exactly how it all went down. Okay, let's kick things off with a pretty big idea. What if the total destruction of House Atreides wasn't actually a tragedy? I mean, yeah, it was for them, but what if, for the rest of the galaxy, it was the one thing that had to happen? The catalyst for a massive revolution. Think of it like this. Their end was secretly a new beginning.
So in this explainer, we're not just doing a plot summary. No, we're going to be detectives. We're going to investigate how a 10,000-year-old empire basically engineered its own downfall. We'll pull on all the threads, the plots, the paranoia, the prophecies, and see how it all made the story we know from Dune not just something that could happen, but something that was always going to happen.
All right, first up, an emperor's self-destruction. This is all about how paranoia basically became a prophecy. So where do we even start with a story this big? Well, you got to start at the top, with the most powerful man in the entire known universe, the Padishah Emperor himself, Shaddam IV.
See, this guy was consumed by one thing, and one thing only, the fear of being overthrown. He was so obsessed with holding on to his power, clinging to that golden lion throne, that it became the very thing that brought his entire dynasty crashing down. It's a classic case, right? Power doesn't just corrupt, it makes you blind to what's really happening.
And this idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy, I mean, this is basically Shaddam's entire biography. It's a belief that you have that's so strong, you act in a way that makes it come true. His terror of losing the throne was so intense that every single move he made just pushed him closer and closer to, well, losing the throne.
So here's how it all spiraled out of control. First, he tries to break the Spacing Guild's monopoly on spice by secretly creating his own synthetic version, called Amel. Big move. Except, it's a complete disaster. It fails catastrophically. The guild finds out and exposes him, which makes him look incredibly weak. So what does he do? He panics. He needs to look strong again, so he decides to take out his biggest rival, the most popular guy in the galaxy, Duke Leto Atreides. You can just see the desperation building with every bad decision.
And that's the key, right there. His final, fatal mistake wasn't some grand show of strength. It was a desperate, panicked move that came from the failure of his own schemes. He was trying to put out a tiny little spark he imagined, and in doing so, he lit a real bonfire that would burn his entire empire to the ground.
Okay, let's switch gears. Because for every villain, you need a victim. Let's talk about how honor can become a weakness, and the tragic nobility of Duke Leto Atreides. This is the other half of that fatal equation, the man who became the perfect target for all that imperial paranoia.
Duke Leto's problem was, he was too good. In a galaxy full of schemers and backstabbers, his growing popularity and his principled rule made him the #1 threat to the Emperor's throne. He was this beacon of integrity, you know? But that very honor, that sense of doing the right thing, made him predictable. And in this game, predictable means vulnerable.
I mean, just look at this contrast. On one side, you have Duke Leto, honor, loyalty, principles. On the other, Baron Harkonnen and the Emperor, treachery, cruelty, revenge. It's like they're speaking two different languages. The Baron and the Emperor operated on a level of pure evil that Leto just couldn't comprehend. His own goodness literally blinded him to the trap they were setting.
And really, that's the tragedy of it all. Integrity is great. It's a powerful virtue, for sure. But in the political arena, if it's not paired with a healthy dose of caution, it's just a weakness waiting to be exploited. And his enemies expertly and brutally weaponized it against him.
All right, but here's where it gets even more complicated. This whole mess wasn't just about two families and a paranoid emperor. Oh no, there were other forces, huge, ancient powers, moving pieces in the shadows. This was a galactic chess game, and the emperor wasn't the only one playing.
So while Shaddam thought he was in control, that he was the puppet master, he was really just a pawn. A powerful pawn, sure, but still just a piece in several much larger games being played by others.
And here they are, the real shadow players. First, you've got the Bene Gesserit with their 10,000-year-long breeding program to create their messiah. Then there's the Spacing Guild, who have an absolute chokehold on the galaxy because they control all interstellar travel thanks to the spice. And finally, the one everyone overlooks, the Fremen of Arrakis. The Empire saw them as nothing, but they were secretly building a massive, unified army, just waiting. The Emperor's political power? It was nothing compared to these deep, ancient forces.
But in all of this grand scheming, you get two massive wildcards. First, Lady Jessica. She completely defies the Bene Gesserit and gives birth to a son, Paul, out of love for Duke Leto. An act of love that throws a 10,000-year plan completely off the rails. And second, the power of the overlooked. The Fremen, who everyone dismissed, are sitting on a planet-sized army, just waiting for a leader to show up. So the biggest turning points in history didn't come from an emperor's decree. They came from a mother's choice and a forgotten people's strength.
Which brings us to our final section, the perfect, inevitable trap. How did all these different forces, the paranoia, the honor, the secret plans, all converge on this one dusty planet in the middle of nowhere?
Well, you have the Emperor's paranoia, the Baron's pure hatred, and the Duke's unbreakable honor, all mixed in with the schemes of these shadow players. It created a perfect storm. The plan to send House Atreides to Arrakis wasn't just a trap, it was an inevitability. It was like a black hole, pulling every single one of these players into one single explosive point.
And the most incredible part, the supreme irony of it all, is that the Corrino dynasty's planned victory was always destined to be the trigger for its own spectacular downfall. Everything the villains hated and used against the Atreides, their integrity, their loyalty, their love, is about to be turned into a weapon and unleashed in the form of Paul Atreides. Their greatest triumph was actually their biggest, most catastrophic mistake. So, we'll leave you with this question to chew on. Does a positive outcome justify the personal tragedy caused by disobedience? Think about it. Lady Jessica's choice to defy her orders is the moral pivot for this entire story. Her disobedience might have saved humanity in the long run, but in the short term, it brought ruin and suffering to everyone she loved. So what's the real cost of changing destiny? It's a heck of a question.